Buffett and the discipline of unexciting truth. Buffett's worldview begins with a blunt acceptance that most truths worth acting on are profoundly unexciting. They do not sparkle. They do not seduce. They do not arrive with cinematic music or narrative climax. They repeat themselves year after year with minimal variation, asking only to be obeyed rather than admired. This repels most people. Buffett leaned into it deliberately, almost defiantly. Unexciting truth is durable precisely because it makes no appeal to emotion. It does not depend on timing, mood, or collective enthusiasm. It does not require charisma to be persuasive, nor does it collapse when attention migrates elsewhere. Buffett understood early that boredom is often the emotional signal of reality asserting itself without adornment. When an idea remains correct long after it has ceased to be interesting, it has crossed from opinion into law. This is why Buffett distrusts novelty. New ideas are not wrong by default, but they are unproven, and unproven things demand vigilance. Vigilance is metabolically expensive. It decays under stress, distraction, and time. Proven things demand patience instead. Patience is metabolically cheap once installed. It compounds quietly. Buffett chose the path that conserved cognitive energy and let time do the heavy lifting. In a culture addicted to stimulation, Buffett built an edge by cultivating tolerance for monotony. He did not merely endure repetition. He used it as a filter. Anything that could not withstand repeated inspection across decades was unworthy of capital. This discipline eliminated most errors before they ever had a chance to occur. Buffett and the economics of inevitability. Most investors attempt to predict. Buffett attempts to corner probability. Prediction is theatrical. It flatters the ego by implying foresight. Buffett rejects this posture entirely. He asks not what might happen, but what must happen if nothing extraordinary intervenes. This reframing is subtle but devastating. It removes fantasy from the equation and collapses a wide field of possibilities into a narrow trajectory governed by incentives, structure, and human behavior. If a business has pricing power, loyal customers, low capital intensity, and honest management, then, absent catastrophe, it will continue producing cash. Time will not erode it, time will amplify it. Buffett does not need clairvoyance to benefit from this dynamic. He needs only the discipline to wait while others grow restless. Inevitability is not certainty, it is resilience under variance. Buffett positions himself inside forces that do not require perfection to succeed. He does not need optimal conditions, only survivable ones. This is why volatility rarely disturbs him. Volatility is noise layered on top of direction. Buffett listens only for direction. By aligning with inevitability, Buffett converts time from an adversary into an accomplice. Every year that passes without disaster strengthens his position. Few investors understand how asymmetric this advantage becomes over decades. Buffett and the institutionalization of patience. Patience, practiced individually, is admirable. Patience, institutionalized, is unstoppable. Buffett understood that personal temperament is fragile, but structure endures. He embedded patience into Berkshire Hathaway's DNA so thoroughly that even his successors would be constrained to behave rationally. Long-term incentives replaced quarterly theatrics. Decentralized operations minimized bureaucratic interference. Capital allocation was centralized, but operations were liberated. This architecture was not accidental. It was defensive. It prevented short-term pressures, analysts, media, transient shareholders, from infecting decision-making. Most organizations rot not because of malice, but because their incentive systems reward immediacy. Buffett removed immediacy from the equation entirely. As a result, Berkshire behaves less like a corporation and more like a permanent capital organism. It absorbs shocks without panic, reallocates resources without spectacle, and compounds quietly while louder institutions burn themselves out. This is patience made structural, and once patience becomes structural, it ceases to depend on virtue. Buffett and the slow death of bad ideas. Bad ideas rarely die dramatically. They persist through excuses, narratives, and sunk-cost rationalizations. Buffett does not kill bad ideas with confrontation. He allows them to suffocate. He starves them of capital. He does not argue with them. He does not debate them publicly. He simply refuses to fund them. This refusal is calm, unemotional, and final. Over time, this restraint looks prescient. In reality, it is negative selection at scale. By consistently avoiding fragility, Buffett allows fragile systems to self-destruct elsewhere. He does not need to predict which bad ideas will fail. He only needs to avoid participation. This is why his mistakes feel small in retrospect. He rarely places himself in positions where error is fatal. His losses are bounded, his wins unbounded. This asymmetry is not luck, it is design. Buffett and the role of humor. Buffett's humor is often dismissed as folksy. This is a mistake born of superficial analysis. Humor is a compression algorithm. It reduces complexity into memory. Buffett uses it strategically because humor bypasses resistance. People remember jokes long after they forget charts, footnotes, and disclaimers. A well-placed aphorism can outlive 1,000 spreadsheets. This is not accidental charm. It is strategic pedagogy. Buffett does not overwhelm audiences with brilliance. He disarms them into understanding. By lowering defenses, he allows difficult ideas, risk, patience, probabilistic thinking to implant themselves quietly. This is why his influence extends far beyond elite investors. His ideas propagate culturally as well as financially, embedding themselves in the collective psyche of markets. Buffett and the morality of predictability. Buffett believes that predictability is ethical. When partners know how you will behave, they can plan. When employees know the rules will not change arbitrarily, they commit. When markets know you will not exploit panic maliciously, they trust. Trust, once established, reduces friction everywhere it touches. This predictability lowers systemic stress. Buffett profits from lower stress because calm systems misprice less violently, but they endure longer. He prefers endurance to extraction. Stability is not stagnation, it is controlled evolution. Buffett understood that systems collapse not from slowness but from volatility without anchor. Buffett and the management of regret. Regret is corrosive because it distorts future judgment. Buffett minimizes regret by designing decisions that are defensible even if outcomes disappoint. If the reasoning was sound and the margin of safety respected, he accepts failure without psychological damage. Loss becomes data, not trauma. Most people cannot do this. They personalize loss. They attach identity to outcomes. Buffett professionalizes it. He treats decisions as processes, not reflections of self-worth. This allows him to return to neutrality faster than others. Neutrality is where opportunity becomes visible again. Emotional residue blinds most investors long after the event has passed. Buffett and the rejection of identity investing. Buffett does not identify as a value investor, a growth investor, a macro thinker. These labels become prisons. He identifies as an allocator of capital under uncertainty. Everything else is technique. Techniques evolve. Principles endure. By separating identity from method, Buffett preserved his ability to adapt without psychological friction. Most investors cannot do this because their ego is fused to a style. To abandon the style would feel like self-annihilation. Buffett avoided this trap entirely. This detachment is liberation. It allows him to change his mind without shame, and to do so publicly. Buffett and the economics of trusted slowness. In crises, speed is mistaken for competence. Buffett moves slowly and is sought out precisely because of it. When systems fail, participants want certainty, not brilliance. They want someone whose behavior is legible under stress. Buffett's slowness signals stability. Stability attracts capital the way gravity attracts mass. Thus, during crises, capital flows toward him unbidden. This is not coincidence. It is reputational gravity, accumulated over decades of consistency. Buffett and the absence of urgency. Urgency is usually fear wearing productivity's clothing. Buffett eliminated urgency from his life by aligning expenses, commitments, and expectations with long-term reality. No lifestyle requires constant returns. No narrative requires constant wins. Nothing is leveraged against tomorrow. This absence of urgency is rare and devastatingly powerful. When opportunity arises, he can act without panic because nothing else is pressing. He is never forced. The second silence. At this depth, Buffett's philosophy converges on silence again. Silence between decisions, silence between trades, silence between reactions. This silence is not emptiness. It is compressed intent. It is the discipline of waiting without decay. When Buffett finally acts, the action carries the accumulated weight of restraint. This is why his moves ripple disproportionately. They are rare, legible, and heavy. Terminal addendum. The law Buffett obeys. Beneath everything, Buffett obeys one law. Never place yourself in a position where you must be brilliant to survive. He structured a life, a firm, and a philosophy where being consistently reasonable beats being intermittently extraordinary. He chose robustness over glamour, permanence over applause. Most men gamble on moments. Buffett engineered inevitability. And inevitability, sustained long enough, becomes indistinguishable from destiny.